Our fight to eradicate corruption, maladministration, unethical leaders, and the abuse of taxpayers' money by those in power continues. It's fresh, it's fearless, and focused. The Outer Hour, where your voice matters.
Hello and welcome to the Outer Hour. I'm Tom London with you for the next 60 minutes along with the Outer team and experts as we talk water. Are we fast getting into a situation in KZN where there's water everywhere and not a drop to spare? We're getting reports out of the KwaZulu-Natal province that there are connectivity issues across cell phone networks. Electricity is down, water supply is being disrupted, and the roads and facilities in the area are a mess. We will be crossing to KZN tonight to chat to Tim Tyrrell, who is part of the CAN team. And Tim, I hope, will give us an account of what he sees happening in the province. So do stay tuned for that. And we will have Dr. Ferial Adam on this evening. And Ferial will be chatting about the Blue Drop report. How good is our drinking water? And I think this all links into what we're seeing in KZN over the last few days and hopefully do not see over the next couple of days. Are our sanitation and our wastewater facilities and the management of these facilities up to scratch? Well, no, say most South Africans. And how does this affect you as a South African in the context of this devastating flooding that we've seen in the KZN province? We will also be talking, because this is becoming national discourse and this is becoming an issue. You know, we've been banging on about it on the show for quite a while. Water. Let's shine the spotlight on water in South Africa. And over the last few days, we've seen the impact of flooding on a province in South Africa. And undoubtedly, we're going to see an impact on the infrastructure. So we'll be discussing that tonight, as well as what you can do as a community member and civil activist on the Outer Hour with our guests. So join in the comment section down below. Let's see who's in the comment section. Well, first up in the comment section is actually Samantha van Nispen, who will be moderating both Facebook and YouTube tonight. Hey, Sam?
That's right. Both Facebook and YouTube. Please be gentle. I will respond as quickly as possible.
And so, you'll be okay. And Sam, Dr. Ferial Adam had a cat waltzing across the screen when we set up for the show. I haven't seen your cat anywhere. I know you got a couple. They're hovering around in the background.
They try to hide away from the screen because they know they get a lot of attention when they cross the screen.
All right. Well, that's Samantha van Nispen. When you chat to Outer in YouTube or Facebook, you'll be chatting to Sam tonight. And then the show is put together by Devany Davids. Let's say hello to Devany this evening, our show's producer. Hello, Devany.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone.
And how are things your side of the world?
Things are well. How are you?
I can't complain. I think if we were in KZN, it would be a very different story. There's your show producer, Devany Davids, standing by in the background this evening. Now, let's say hello, shall we, to you. Normally at this time, we say how's it to whoever's climbing on board. So pop your comments into the comment section down below the video. Tell us hello, say where you're watching from. We love to see our regular viewers interacting with us. And if you're in the KZN province, if you've got any information for us and you'd like to contribute to the discussion tonight, let us know what you're seeing in your neighborhood. Let us know what's happening in your part of the world. Then pop those comments into the comment section down below the video. We'll put some of them up on screen, I'm sure. So welcome to you. We'll pop some of those comments up in just a moment. But before we do, let's say hello to our guests this evening. And say firstly down to KZN, Tim Tyrrell. Hello, Tim, and our commiserations and all our good thoughts and wishes for you and your neighbors and compatriots in KZN. What has been happening from your side? What have you seen, Tim? You're in the Durban area.
Yeah, we're in a suburb called Westville, Tom. I think we were the victim of some weather cell which kind of gave us a disproportionate amount of water, although looking at some of the national or the wider scale videos, particularly down in the floodplain in the industrial area called Prospecton, where all those containers were adrift. You may have seen the BBC report earlier today.
Yes.
Some very disturbing visuals. I mean, it just shows you the power of nature. But that coupled with an aging and crumbling infrastructure and some perhaps not optimum maintenance and development standards as far as water supply and water management is concerned, certainly points us in a certain direction as far as outer is concerned. So there's lots to talk about on that level. But just quickly, the devastation here is quite scary. We have very close friends and neighbors who are not far from us, who have been the victim of a washaway. Their house was completely and utterly destroyed. People down the hill from them, the buildings were washed away as well. One person is still missing, but that pales into insignificance compared to the nearly 260 deaths that have been recorded in the province so far, and I'm sure there are more to come. So it's worrying. Yeah.
Certainly worrying from our side as we sit high and dry up in Gauteng, but most people who live in South Africa have friends or family in your area, and we're thinking of you this evening. I must also warn you as you watch this program this evening, there's widespread load shedding around South Africa, and that's affecting internet connectivity. So far, so good with all of our guests, although Julius Kleinans had to drive to his local garage to get a signal. Hello, Julius, and thanks for making the effort to drive down the drag to get onto the show.
Thank you very much. Other side of the mountain, there's no signal. So, interestingly, I managed to cross the river for the first time also in about 3-4 days today. A low water bridge, a lot of rain in the northwest as well. But luckily not as devastating as in KZN. So I thought so with you guys, Tim.
I'm glad that Julius found a signal and is on the show this evening. It's important topics to discuss. And then last but not least, Dr. Ferial Adam. Hello, Ferial. I'm hoping the cat's going to be in the shot. Ferial?
Hi, Tom. Sorry, I was on mute.
Don't worry. I'm on mute half the time as well. Are you shocked at what you're seeing coming out of news reports and on social media, the images that we've been exposed to?
In terms of, yes, I think I can't even imagine being there right now, or, it's just, you feel helpless. So many people need assistance. So many people have lost their lives. It's absolutely just frightening. And I think that government's doing the right thing by calling for a state of disaster in the province, because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal with what's going on.
Let's take a look at what you've got to say as you join us on the Outer Hour live. 7 p.m. every Wednesday is when the show takes place. We're loading comments now, and I'll put them up on screen. Let's see where you are, how life is going with you, and what you have to say. First up this evening, and we'll just do the first couple of comments and get into the conversation. First up this evening was Michael John Billsbury out of the Eastern Cape. Hi, Tom and the Outer team, says Michael. Trevor Ward says, hi, Outer and Tom. Looking forward to another informative hour. So am I. Thank you, Trevor. We've got Hilda Mayer who says, hi, Outer team from Germany. Hello, Hilda. Thanks for joining us. Tsepo Kwedi says, hi, good evening. Hi, Tsepo, and thank you for joining us this evening. Jeff Scott says, good evening all. Hello, Jeff. And a warm welcome to you. Diane LaRue says, hello, I'm watching from East London. We had a hot, sunny day today. I wish I could send it to KZN. Freddie Mills says, stay safe, KZN. Thinking of you. Johan Elof says, I was at Port Edward today. Dion de Toy, when will government step in and help? And perhaps we'll touch on this, but I'm sure there are plans being made to deal with what I think is an absolute state of disaster in the KZN province. Ben Charles Fraser says, good evening from a cool Cape Town. Shout out to Stellenbosch Traffic Department. Walked in this morning for a driver's license renewal. Done and sorted by 9:30. That's what we want to hear from our Outer Hour viewers. That's the kind of service we want from our testing centres. We got, who else have we got here? We got Roland Krabenoff. We'll do one or two more. Hi, thoughts are all with in KZN suffering from the devastation. Rachel Fisher. Hello, Rachel. Rachel says, good evening, team. Great program tonight. We can do this. Melissa Whitehorn is joining us from Pretoria. Richard Sykes says, hey, guys. Freddie Mills is saying the looters are busy again. We are getting reports of some looting in the KZN province. Let's hope that it's not as bad as we saw a while back. Mornay Smith says, good evening all. Hello, Mornay. Morag Cove, East London is where Morag is joining us from. And then we'll put more of the hellos up on as we roll across the show. So, good evening. Welcome to the Outer Hour. The theme of the discussion tonight is water. Tim, if I may start with you. It's always very difficult when we see images on Facebook and Twitter and coming out of news media, because it's the job of news to sensationalize. I use the word loosely, of course, but news media and social media will focus on the areas and pockets of devastation. And the difficult thing for me, and I guess anybody not in KZN at the moment, is trying to get a grip on how widespread this devastation we've seen is along the coast of KZN. Could you give us an idea of what you're seeing, what you're experiencing in KZN at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's quite difficult. I do want to just say right up front that what you see is entirely true, and it's not in any way, I think, sensationalizing the issue. There are areas, and it is obviously localized to some degree, where things are really, really bad. You may, as I said earlier, have seen the BBC visuals earlier in the day, which showed an aerial shot of the flooding in the floodplain near what used to be the old Durban airport. There are literally hundreds of shipping containers which have been completely washed off their parking spaces, so to speak, and some of them were seen and filmed floating out to sea down the Umhlatazana River. One of those big tanker trailers ended up on the beach. It's bad. Now, obviously, that's obviously got some shock value from a geography point of view, but I think the human stories that come out of it are probably more pertinent. We've had people who've lost homes. We've had people who've lost loved ones. We've had people who've lost livelihoods. And the tragedy is awful. And interestingly, and I'm not a geographer or a weather expert, but it seems to have been confined to the coastal strip. Certainly Durban, eThekwini on the lower side of the ridge, which defines the coastal area or the coastal belt, is where it has been worst manifested. It goes all the way up to Umhloti in the north, where there were some very serious reports of damage, and right down to Ilovo and Umkomaas in the south. But Imanzimtoti was also a very strong focal point for some of the devastation. But it is widespread, but it tends to have been along the coastal strip, probably 100 kilometers from top to bottom, north to south.
I wanted to ask Dr. Ferial Adam Ferial, we 2 weeks ago we spoke about wastewater treatment and wastewater management in South Africa when we were talking about the green drop report, and the theme of our discussion this evening is the blue drop report. We'll get into that in the second half of the show. But what I wanted to know from you was, how does what we've seen in KZN with the floods and the flooding we've seen, and I'm thinking of pictures where blocks of flats are being washed away, houses built on mountain, hillsides, the foundations are being eroded, and people are evacuating houses as we speak. Now, there's so much of this that is just devastation from the size and scale of what KZN has experienced in terms of rainfall. But I'm wondering how much of an impact does our crumbling infrastructure have on the residents at a time like this? Does it play any part at all, or is this just so overwhelming that even if we had the greatest infrastructure in the world, it wouldn't make a difference?
Look, there's the potential that if we had the greatest, that we would still have some kind of impact, but not to the extent that we're seeing now. Also, what we're seeing in KZN is a provincial government that is basically lost control of what's happening with infrastructure. It's so bad. And that is the reality, is that across the country, while KZN has been hit this week, this could have happened in any province in South Africa and have very similar results, because we have poor infrastructure across the country, and that is the problem. So I think that it definitely exacerbated the problem. I don't think that we can say if there was 100% best infrastructure in the world that no damage would have been caused, because I think all of these things are also linked to planning and where development occurs, and we need to seriously think about that. But the bottom line is the bulk of the failure at this point lies with our failing infrastructure. And if we just look at some of the reports that come out from the water boards themselves, they're saying that a lot of the systems have been broken, and it's because of infrastructure that they know has been failing. Would
you agree with that, Tim?
Yes, I think so, Tom. the worry is that there is an ongoing tone of neglect, certainly here in the province as far as water infrastructure is concerned. And yes, while one willingly acknowledges that this is probably a 20 or a 30-year event, and we have shades of the devastation that was caused by Des Moines back in 1987, but nonetheless, if the infrastructure is already fragile, there is absolutely no hope that it's going to resist this kind of onslaught. There would no doubt be substantial damage, even if the infrastructure was strong. But I think a substantial portion of the failure, if you like, has been due to neglect and poor maintenance over the years.
Julius?
I'm sorry, can I just add
yes,
something?
of course, go ahead.
I think that we cannot deny the impact of climate change, and we're going to see more and more of these kind of climate shocks that are going to affect us, whether it's a drought or whether it's a flood. And I think that people can say that it's a 20-year event, but we are dealing with a different kind of environment right now. We cannot say that this is not going to happen again. We're seeing South Africa being impacted by many climate shocks that we wouldn't normally be impacted by. For example, you're getting cyclones that are coming onto the coastline that are coming inland, which for the first time we haven't had that in forever. So I think we have to be mindful that we're going to be dealing with these kind of climate shocks. But if our infrastructure is completely destroyed or completely, not maintained, that we're going to be having these hard hits each time, and it's going to affect us economically, it's going to affect our health, and it's going to just affect basic life.
Julius, what were your thoughts when you saw the images of the damage coming in?
It's devastating, and I can add to my colleagues, I think if you look at the deterioration of infrastructure, that's got a significant impact. But there's a lot of other things that go to it as well. It's easy to blame the municipality. But I just want to put things a bit more in perspective when it comes to infrastructure. There's clearly bylaws that state, for instance, that your gutters shouldn't go into the sewage system. And because that, you can imagine now the amount of rain that you've seen in KZN, that excessive rain and water runoff going into these infrastructure systems. And that's concentrating a lot of water through piped infrastructure that doesn't go through a natural course of infiltrating and going into soil and roots taking that water up and all that. So the friction is much higher, and the concentration of water to a runoff, like in some of these water courses we've seen, that plays a significant role to the amount of water and erosion that comes with it. And water and erosion specifically, because that's what we've actually seen. We've seen huge amounts of water concentrated in a specific runoff area. And because the natural infrastructure, call it the wetland and your soils, cannot manage that amount of water, you see mudslides and things that we've seen. So it is significant. Absolutely right. Dr. Adam, spot on. Global warming is happening, and the concentration of rain, specifically such as we've seen, will much more be focused around the Lesotho area and on the KZN and Eastern Cape front. So we will see much of these things in the future.
Let's see what you've got to say as you write in the comment section down below this video. Genevieve Chisholm says, hey guys from KZN area, thank you for what you do. The devastation of infrastructure, main bridges are gone, main roads are gone. There's looting. We're terrified of lack of revenue of government to fix these areas. Freddie Mills says, what has KZN done to deserve this carnage? So frustrating, isn't it? Sharon is touching on tenders awarded by corrupt officials and no maintenance. Does corruption play a part in any way in what we've seen on our screens? Is there a link? Anyone?
For sure. I mean, I don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so.
Go. All right. Let's go with Ferial first. She jumped in first, and then we'll get to you, Tim. Okay, Ferial.
I mean, there's no doubt that corruption plays a role in what we're seeing at a local government level, and from infrastructure, maintenance to skills development, all of that, because money is then not being used for the purpose that it needs to be used. It's then siphoned off for some other reason, and then things just fall apart. So it definitely does play a role.
Tim?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ferial. I just want to also make the point that, yes, this has been a very catastrophic event in the extreme near term. So what it's done is it's focused our attention on water infrastructure. And I don't mean to dilute, if you'll forgive the wordplay, the focus on the event of the moment. But if you expand that just quickly, any municipal budget should have 8% set aside in terms of revenue or expenditure over the next 12 months on maintenance and infrastructure. And those are guidelines which are set out by Treasury and are expected to be followed by municipalities. I don't know the exact numbers, but there are very, very, very few, if any, who have that amount of allocation. And that has been accumulating for many, many years. So now we see the problem in the water infrastructure. We also see the problem playing out in the roads infrastructure and the electricity reticulation, and so it goes. So there is, without doubt, diversion of funds. Without doubt, there is fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and some of it is due to corruption. And I think that question is absolutely spot on.
Nick Petula says, good evening from Johannesburg. Not only infrastructure that has not been maintained, would you also not think that poor town planning, not adhering to rules when constructing buildings and the lack of policing these rules? This includes allowing informal settlements next to dormant riverbeds. And I saw a lot of discussion on social media today about new developments and how big developers may be skirting their responsibilities when it comes to dealing with wastewater and runoff water. So this problem is clearly bigger than just a couple of days of extreme rainfall. There are many elements that we would need to discuss to try and get to the bottom of the devastation we've seen. It certainly looks a little more complex than what we see when we see the pictures. There's a lot behind the story. Well, it's an interesting time to have this discussion because we've been talking about OUTER's initiative, the Water Can. Here it is on screen now, the Community Action Network, and that's why we've got Tim Tyrrell on board. Tim is the Can Regional Manager in KZN. Junius Kleinans is OUTER's Executive Manager of Social Innovations. Both of them are working on this project. We introduced it to you a few weeks ago, but I think let's get into the meat of CAN and the heart of CAN and find out what we can do as civil society to address our municipalities, which are falling apart. And that crumbling infrastructure, we're now seeing how devastating the damage is when a flood comes along. God knows what's going to happen in a week or two from now when we start counting up the damage. Already, the loss of human life is over 200 people lost, and I'm sure the number will climb. We hope it doesn't climb much more. So let me throw that question at you, Tim. What can we do as civil society to play a part in correcting this, in reversing what we've seen as far as crumbling infrastructure is concerned?
Well, thank you, Tom. There is a population that probably needs, dare I use the term, a kick in the pants. If we look at the supply of services and the consumption of services as a business relationship with a supplier and a customer, your ratepayer and your resident of local areas are very clearly the customers here. And I think what is lacking is a broad-based, shall we say, civic consumerism, in the sense that citizens, residents, ratepayers need to understand that they are entitled to and are constitutionally guaranteed, in inverted commas, the supply of basic services, whether it's water, electricity, and various parts of infrastructure, sanitation, etc. And the municipalities, many of them are on their knees. The recent Auditor General's report will show that many of them are in a dire state. And the counter to that, or one of the counters to that, dare I say, is the community of community organizations, in that there are many of us who have a strong civic sense and we get together and we share concerns and perhaps even actions that are appropriate in order to try and improve services in local areas. But what that movement lacks is coordination. What it lacks is administration of its membership base. What it lacks is resources. And what we have done, based on some research which we conducted about 18 months ago, developed the CAN platform, which is a digital platform which is specifically designed to help community organizations organize themselves effectively, raise funds, and thereby to turn themselves into a far more effective entity to be able to engage with their local authorities and, as Wayne Duvenage says, hold their feet to the fire to make sure and to insist that the services which are constitutionally mandated are indeed delivered.
Well, it's important. It's an important time to talk about community action and the Community Action Network. Julius, what is the Community Action Network, specifically for our viewers who never caught the show a few weeks ago when we introduced it to the Outer Hour viewers? What is CAN?
I think I want to add to what Tim said exactly. It's a platform that helps to coordinate and organize civil society. So whether you're an organization in your community or whether you're an individual sitting now listening and saying, wow, I can resonate with that, I need to do something. This platform enables you and empowers you to do exactly that. It helps lessen the administrative burden on volunteers and individuals such as ourselves. If we've got an interest in our community where we stay, who wants to step up and do something about the wrongs that we see around us. We also want to see how we can start educating people more about their rights. Tim very cleverly and very specifically said that you're the customer, so you need to be served. Why does it feel like us as customers are the ones that need to serve those who need to serve us? It's a big problem, but what goes hand in hand with that is, and I just want to turn it on his head a bit, we are also the shareholders of this business called the municipality. And I think it can be interesting just to hear how many of the viewers now have ever participated in an IDP. And if you don't know what an IDP is, if maybe one of you do know, and please just write out what IDP means. And this is very important because if you don't know what your rights are as a shareholder in an entity such as this, what are you participating in? What are you voting on? Because that's where the power lies. Every year you've got the ability and the right to vote and participate and tell your municipality how they must spend your money. And it can be very interesting to see just in this environment now, how many people have ever participated and told the municipality, according to following the processes, how their money should be spent. And obviously then from there, people vote on a budget that's allocated and that needs to be driven. And that's what the municipalities mandate. But one step further is how do you monitor on a monthly basis the performance of this entity in which you are a shareholder? And that's how we want to organize people to ensure that they take ownership of this thing called a municipality.
Poppy Bailey, I think Outer asked the question, have you ever participated in the IDP process, prompted by Julius Kleinans? And then Poppy Bailey said, I participate every time. So there's your first CAN member. Hey, Poppy, if you haven't joined CAN, you've got to do it. You're the ideal candidate. Who is the ideal candidate for CAN, Tim?
Every community organization at what we call hyperlocal level. We have a fairly well-established, perhaps patchy and largely concentrated in the metro areas. We have the traditional Ratepayers Association, which is basically a community of residents who get together and discuss and process issues that affect them. Some of them are very active and some of them are very effective. But with due respect, there are very few of them compared to the population at large. So what we are aiming for is the ratepayer and residents associations, community policing forums, even down to street committee level. We're inviting them to join the CAN platform so that they can promote their identity, promote their structures to their communities and make sure that their communities participate more actively in civic affairs.
So am I correct in saying, Julius, that if I'm a member of a ratepayers association or I'm a member of a community group of any sort with an interest in dealing with issues and problems in my community, that this is the platform for me?
Absolutely. We've, as Tim mentioned earlier, we've done some very good research in this space, and obviously we've got a lot of experience on the activist side of it. And in this research, what we've done is we've engaged a variety of residents associations, community forums, and even unorganized structures with an interest in doing something about the problems in their municipality. And some of these elements come to environmental affairs, community safety, and those things as well. But through that, we could determine where the shortcomings are, where the gaps are, and also look at Outer and what's made Outer so successful. So we've started bringing about digital tools with that experience, and in the form of how can you communicate, send newsletters, how can you have a website where you can put in an article at the back end and it pulls through, how can you automate your membership so that people can sign up and contribute on a monthly basis, so that you've got the sustainable revenue to do the actions and projects your community wants to do. And it's features such as this. So we've almost built kind of a business toolbox for a non-profit organization or an organized entity that can challenge and hold to account. But with that, we're also bringing about the guidelines and the training, and we're sharing best practices so that people are informed on what they need to do. Step 1 to 5, how to take a water sample. Step 1 to 3, how do you declare a dispute on your property rights bill? And even bigger things such as how do you build a case to challenge an individual in your municipality? So we're really trying to consistently improve and build. But I think where one of the biggest strengths lies, and I think this is more of the medium to long-term strategy, is to create this action network. Now, you cannot waive the network side of this. So it is not Outer. It is really about empowering communities, but communities aren't islands on their own. We need to start working together, because we will find that there's 5 or 6 of these organizations just in one little town. And it's really about building the bridges between them and ensuring that when there's common causes, they address that as a collective instead of individuals, but also not shying away from taking ownership of what's happening in your neighborhood.
Let's look at some of the questions. See, Kevin Rack, who's watching on YouTube, says, who funds CAN? Where does the money come from? How do you fund CAN?
Good question. So, yes, Outer has seed funded this as an initiative. So CAN is an initiative of Outer. It's a community action network. And how it also works is when you start signing up your members in your community and you sign up as CAN. So firstly, you go through and people can go check out can.org.za, can.org.za, and they can go and click on Get Started and just follow some of those steps. But we're trying to automate the process as well as we can, so that people can then organize themselves and build the structure, and it helps with best practice, but good governance and ensuring that everything's intact, so that we don't see people abusing these kind of entities in their towns. But what goes along with that is when you sign up and you start getting memberships that contribute in your community, and I can take my community as an example, because I've tested it. I'm participating in this myself. In fact, I'm also serving on our committee, which is interesting, and we learn as we go. But all of a sudden, you've got various individuals who've always complained about the stuff, contributing a small amount, very much the same as Outer, where we've got supporters that contribute small amounts. But all of a sudden, a large amount of small amounts becomes something to reckon with. So you're building this consistent income flow that you as a community manage. Now, 15% of that goes to the CAN initiative, and that's to maintain these tools, build new tools for future expansion and assistance in these communities so that we can address the issues, but also then possibly doing, precedent-setting litigation and just consistently empowering this machine and this evolution of this network. We're going to have various webinars that's going to inform people and get them on board. But I want to just touch on that because it's very important. So that 15% covers everything, and then you still have 85% of whatever you've generated in your community and all your members coming about that creates a sustainable income so that this community now can actually start addressing very big issues, which they've always thought about but could never dream of achieving. And that's beautiful because I'm sensing it and seeing it in my community. And yes, I live in the sticks, I'm here in the Northwest in a farming community. And in the last 11 years, they were very unorganized and they've dealt with a lot of issues. And it was always the same 5 people that tried to contribute to some of these things and fix things. But it's never been sustainable. And now all of a sudden, you start seeing everyone participating, various interests though. Some people are doing community safety things. Some of them are challenging the municipality, of which one I'm part of that. Some people are part of the water and environmental teams looking after our ecosystem. And it's just beautiful because everyone's interested in one part of it. But everyone's contributing a small amount of a minimum of $50 a month in our community specifically now. And all of a sudden, we can fix our roads. We've got extra security systems. We're consistently building. And now we've taken ownership of our community and we're building. And I tell you, Tom, I can see in the near future, if we don't go independent in our community, we'll be able to challenge this municipality in court properly and put some proper actions in place. So very exciting. This is a journey, and we want to encourage everyone to get part of it.
Well, I see Kevin says, and I'm assuming he's talking about the CAM project, says, watching on YouTube tonight, the structure and the way I saw it unfold, getting the best out of people, was the most inspiring action I've seen in my lifetime so far. Everyone felt accountable and empowered. Then there's a comment that came in from Daryl Grayling. It's a bit long to put on screen, but I'll read it out. He said, look, it's just I'm going to paraphrase. It's an exercise in futility, says Daryl. I'm sorry to say, I stood on my own for 11 years. I wrote countless letters to corrupt Johannesburg town planning for illegal building going up in Midrand. I put my own neck on the line, got no support. My son was shot twice in the gut, still carries one of the bullets around with him. And that's an indication, I think, of what happens when you try and fight power alone. Is that what this is all about, Tim? Taking community networks around the country and pulling them and gluing them together so that there's strength in numbers when it comes to dealing with these issues?
That's exactly it, Tom. And, obviously one needs to tread cautiously when one is confronting a municipality or a local authority on contentious issues. And I sympathize with the contributor in terms of his own safety and safety of family members. That's an awful situation to be put into. One has to kind of balance that and realize that this is a fight, and perhaps fight even is the wrong word. It is a constructive engagement exercise where we are seeking to improve the quality of life for residents. We want prosperous, safe, and attractive communities where people want to live there and are not constantly looking over their shoulders or second guessing the service provider when there are potholes in the road and sewage running down the streets. So there are so many issues that we need to do to uplift and empower. I think the key byword here is empowerment. And yes, strength lies in numbers. Yes, there are communities that get more and more powerful as they grow. And as they grow with those individual contributions that Julius was alluding to, they become immensely powerful in terms of being able to command resources that they can bring to bear to take on challenges, to improve infrastructure, to improve water delivery, bulk services, sanitation, you name it. But the traditional position of the Resident and or Ratepayers Association is one of interested parties where they appoint a single spokesperson and the spokesperson goes out on a limb and basically carries the responsibility on behalf of the community. We want to move away from that and to get this kind of collective involvement where everybody is a contributor and everybody is part of the action. And it's all about empowerment, and it's all about upskilling, and it's all about providing them with the resources that they need in order to be able to perform those actions.
Tim Tyrrell is the CAN Regional Manager in KZN. And if you have not been to the website, pop along to watercan.org.za. Watercan.org.za. It's up on your screen at the moment. And take a look at the CAN initiative. Consider joining it. Now, let's continue talking water and the quality of our drinking water, shall we, with Dr. Ferial Adam, the project manager at Outer for Water and Environment, and talk about the Blue Drop reports. I don't know about you, and I'd be keen to hear what you've got to say as you watch this program, either live or post. Pop your comment in down below so we can get a good idea of where you stand on this issue. Do you trust your drinking water? Has the level of trust in your drinking water dropped over the years? When you open the tap and you fill your glass and you have a sip, do you worry? Do you question it? Have you had any bad experiences? Have you noticed the quality of your drinking water dropping? I can only speak for myself. I live in a place where we've got a borehole, and the borehole water is not suitable for drinking. So I just used to pop down the road to my family and fill a couple of 10-liter bottles of water, last me a week or two for drinking water. But now I've started going to the water purification shop down the road and paying, R2 a litre for water, trying to get some kind of guarantee and assurance that the water I'm putting in my body is safe. And the Blue Drop report is a red flag for the dire state of most of our water systems and the effect of human rights. And let's ask Ferial about this Blue Drop report. We discussed Green Drop report a few weeks ago. What is Blue Drop report, Ferial?
So the blue, we discussed the Green Drop, which gives you the state of sewage treatment plants in the country. The Blue Drop report is about the quality of our drinking water across the country. So the Department of Water and Sanitation, they do an assessment on our drinking water and our water treatment plants, and then they have, that's the Blue Drop report.
Am I correct in saying that we didn't have these reports from around 2013, 2014 until recently? Why not?
Exactly. So it started out in 2008, and then it's supposed to come out every year. But in 2013, you're correct, was the Green Drop, and 2014 was the Blue Drop, the last ones. It was the previous minister who basically said that things are so bad, we don't want to publicize it. So they stopped releasing the reports.
And was it when our President Ramaphosa turned to the departments and said, look, we need to do better and challenged them to do better? Was that the start of DWS saying, okay, let's reinstate Green and Blue Drop reports?
I think it happened more when we had a change in minister.
Okay.
And so we've had some fresh leadership in the Department of Water and Sanitation. Look, there's still a lot of flaws there, and there's still a lot of problems. But I think the present minister and the present DG are up for the challenge.
Why is the Blue Drop report important to someone like me or any other ordinary South African?
So it's basically telling you whether the water that comes out of your tap is drinkable. And if you think about the fact that, we can go without electricity, you can have load shedding, it's not great, but you can still drink your water, you can still feed yourself, and water's life. So if you start having water that's not drinkable, and I think KZN is going to head in that direction in the coming weeks because of what's going on, you basically have no access to water to drink. We need it to survive. It's our basic life. And if you don't have that, you're going to have diseases. People are going to, get sick. There's going to, and I can see this happening where you're going to have people rioting because of fighting over water. And we saw that in the Cape for when they neared day zero.
Yes.
People were fighting and losing they were losing it. And that's what happens when you don't have water. That is why we have to have good quality drinking water. And the standards that exist in our country right now is just appalling.
Well, that was the question I wanted to ask you. And I guess the question on all the viewers' lips right now is, what is the state of our drinking water?
More than 50% of our water is classified as a medium to critical risk level. So in terms of that, there are certain tests that have to be done on our water treatment plants, right? So they look for microbiological elements, and that would be like looking at E. coli and those kind of things. 60% of our treatment plants across the country do not comply with microbiological standards. 77% do not comply with chemical standards. And that's just the basic things you need to have drinking water.
So hold on. Are you telling me that around the country, chances are when you open the tap, chances are good, and I hate to use the word good, but chances are good that you're not going to get quality water?
I would say in some parts, not so much at the moment. I would say at the moment, Gauteng and Western Cape, but many of the other provinces, yes. I mean, you can just look at, Julius is there in terms of his province and where he stays, is that It's not a new thing. For the last, I would say, more than 8 years, people living close to Hartbeespoort Dam, and that's the irony, they live right there by the dam. They can't drink the water that comes out of their tap. And we're seeing this more and more often happening. We saw, in Ebeja, where there was this whole alert to boil their water before they drink. And it's unacceptable that you can make that announcement, put that alert out, and then just leave it there.
We're asking you the question as you watch this program: do you trust your drinking water? Vanessa Henry says, I don't trust our water. Poppy Bailey says, yes, I trust Mossel Bay water. It tastes good. I drink from the tap every day. And Mornay Smith says, why is everything just going down the drain? What is happening to our country? Why do we pay tax yet? We still got to jump in as the community to fix stuff. It's a question I wish I had the answer to. Tyron Sykes says, am I hearing this right? Results aren't good, so stop reporting it or reporting on it. What? And so, I mean, I was surprised that we didn't have green and blue drop reports for 6 years or so. And when did we start taking them seriously again, Ferial?
Well, the first reports that were released were now, after, 9 years? So we didn't have it. But needless to say that for 9 years, people have been demanding the green drop and blue drop reports. So it doesn't mean that testing wasn't happening. It doesn't mean that some of these, results was not available. But it was just not transparent. It was not accessible to all of us. And I think Julius always uses a very good example. And that is something, I want to share, is that if you go to the shop and you buy a bottle of water, you can see what is in your water. You can get the statistics. You can look at all the chemicals, all of that that's in your water. We don't know that for our tap water. And that is something we need to change. And I do like what your previous person said. It was like, there's so much happening. How do we change it? And I think that the power must come from us. We must not give up our democracy by not being active in government. And, Julius talked about the integrated development plan. We need to go and be part of these processes to demand that the money that Tim mentioned that needs to be put into maintenance and infrastructure must be done. We have that power to do that. We're just not doing it. So I think that, there is a place for citizens to raise their voices in a way that is proactive.
Sure. Kevin Rack says a state of a nation is reflected in its rivers. An ancient traveler's wisdom when approaching a new city and want to know more about its citizens, look in the rivers, says Kevin. Tim, are you worried about the quality of drinking water in KZN after the floods? Is that a concern?
Tom, if there's damage to the infrastructure, yes, of course it's a concern. But I will concede that, yes, because of this catastrophic event, that may have a short-term influence on the quality of drinking water. I can happily recognize that of many of the metros and indeed the large town suppliers, eThekwini is credited for having a very high quality of drinking water, and we really appreciate that. But it is a right, and I'd use that word deliberately. I think it is a right that should be enjoyed by all citizens. We're fortunate in this part of the world. I hope that there's no compromise in terms of quality as far as the damage to infrastructure through the recent floods is concerned. But I think it's something we need to, as they say, spread that goodness around. It's everybody's entitlement to have decent water.
Julius, what is eThekwini doing right to get clean water through the taps that other areas aren't?
Very good question. Well, first of all, they've got competent staff. They budget correctly to manage that. They've got state-of-the-art plants. But I think you must also understand the economic note and that role they play. So if they didn't have that, I don't think eThekwini would have been in the economic state that they are. So obviously there's a lot of industry and things involved. But this is where I want to get back to what Dr. Adam and Tim said. It's a human right. There's no excuse to say that this is Africa, or it's South Africa, or it's a third world country. That's absolute rubbish. There's been more than enough billions of rands allocated to give every single person in this country access to clean drinking water. The government itself is to be blamed. These people have not done their jobs properly. And I think if you look at the Blue Drop report specifically, there's a significant lack of skills. In fact, municipalities, most of the municipalities rather, don't even have laboratories anymore to test the water quality, never mind a budget to do samples. Ferrell touched on it. 10% of all our municipalities supplying drink water, and by the way, municipalities supply drink water, people. 10% of them actually monitor chemical compliance. Chemicals, this is, I don't want to get to the extreme side of chemicals, but this is stuff that actually creates health risks and health effects like cancer. How many people get cancer these days? We speak about processed foods, but air quality and drinking water has got a significant influence on that. And we need to start probing this. How do we change things? By applying our minds, not sharing any nonsense that people say on Facebook and stuff. Getting organized as communities, building the intelligence, really intelligence, meaning that we need to learn, we need to be involved, we need to get the people who know what they're doing involved. And then from there, this groundswell needs to happen where we start probing and participating in our communities. And then you get to a point where there's this thing saying you need to persuade 25% of the community, then you've got the whole community on your side. And it sounds like a big issue, but it's not. Convince 25% of people in your street to participate, and you've got the whole street behind you. And that's what needs to change. We are all hurtful. We're all complaining, and we've been complaining for long. And yes, we pay our rates and taxes because it's the right thing to do. Same like whatever they say on TV licenses, and we all know how we feel about that. But have we ever really stood our ground to those who should serve us? And I don't believe we have. And that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, Poppy Bailey would agree with you. Poppy's talking about IDPs and talking about Mossel Bay and talking about 500 people attending out of 89,000 citizens. And at least half of the 500 people that were there were municipal officials. People just don't give a hoot. We're all fast asleep, says Poppy Bailey. And perhaps the time for a wake-up is now.
Exactly, and that's a very good point, and it's a sad reality. A democracy, and I don't think we really understand as people what democracy means. Democracy means that you've got specific rights. If you don't understand those rights and actually exercise those rights, you don't have a say. So you've got all the say, but if you don't do what the legislation and laws tell you that you can do, stop complaining. Because you're sitting on your hands. And unfortunately, if we want to stay in South Africa, we need to participate in what the law says we need to do.
And I think,
Ferrell,
Tom,
can this be fixed? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think that, Julius is mentioning something that's important, and I want to stress that democracy is more than voting. People say, I voted, I'm part of it. It's more than voting. It's about being an active citizen. And that is what is part of the solution, is that we need to get people to be active citizens, to watch, to be the ears and eyes on the ground. And that's nothing better than people. I want to say, we talked about what is going on in KZN, and that there was poor, and one of the viewers said poor planning and all of that. And that's very true. If we look at the Western Cape right now, I know about 3 developments that the Western Cape government is pushing through on wetlands. And that is a place that's going to get drier and drier with climate change. We know the modeling. So they should not be allowed, and people should support those opposition. So that's the kind of thing where people need to raise their voices in any way that they can. I think that, the integrated development plans are a good place for us to, if we can't do it on our own, find a few people that can work together to actually go and participate in these processes and make sure that government is aware that we're watching so that they cannot mismanage our funds. And that is important. I think that the CAN network, which is what Tim and Julius are working on, which is can.org.za, is an important network for citizens to get involved on a whole range of issues beyond water. And then there's WaterCan. We are asking for people to get together and to test the water around the areas that they live. And that is something we're trying to build a database where we can compare our stats with that of government.
How How do you convince someone like Mornay, who's written a comment that I'm looking at now? So, and Mornay's saying, so now I need to do my day job. After that, I need to build my own solar power. Then I have to sort my water out. And then my own sewage, etc., etc. Why do I pay taxes? And how do you convince? Because I understand that frustration. And I remember having those similar thoughts with the rhino poaching situation years ago, where I made similar comments to Mornay, where I said, why is it my job, Tom, in Johannesburg, to have to do something about poaching where there's all this corruption and there's rot going on? Surely there are networks and there are people that are paid to deal with that. Why do I have to do anything? How do you answer that question?
I think, can I just jump in before Tim?
Yes.
I think that firstly, it has to move away from the I, and we have to organize beyond the I. We have to look at groups and organizations and collective communities that can respond to these things. But you have it's true. I think Julius used the word that people are fed up of corruption. They're fed up that they're paying tax and things are not happening. Let us together change that. And I think that is the difference, because if you're on your own and you feel like you're doing this on your own, it is going to feel daunting, and it is going to feel like, I don't want to do that. I want to just live in a happy place. And yes, you have a day job, so it becomes harder. But I think that volunteerism needs to come back into the way we live. We need to, if we want to make our societies better and root out corruption, it can't just be people like Outa. It has to be the communities themselves.
Got it. Anybody else on the panel want to contribute or to answer that question?
Yeah, please, Tom. This may be cold comfort for Mornay, and I completely understand where he's coming from. And I think traditionally we found ourselves in a place where we are obliged to pay rates and taxes, which we do every month, sometimes through a debit order, so it's unseen. But think about the average consumer or householder who is responsible for paying a consolidated bill to a municipality. They are paying, on average, thousands of rand every single month. Yeah. While I appreciate that entitles them to the services which they're paying for, the counter also applies in the sense that if you're not getting the services which you are forced to pay for, why are you not standing up and making a noise about it? And yes, it is time consuming. And yes, Mornay, I understand you have a day job. I understand all of that. But would you willingly part with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know what the size of your municipal bill is, every month, and not expect the supplier of those services to stand accountable for the delivery? That's the question. And if they don't, do something about it. Challenge. Take up the cause. And exactly what Ferial says. This is where volunteerism and community action and active citizenship comes back to the fore. We need to stand up and to take ownership. Yeah, that's a good term of the services that we believe we should be getting, and in fact, which the Constitution entitles us to have.
Got it. We pay for the services. We're not getting them, so let's club together and, I want to say, bloody well demand them. Seen that too.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
All right.
Absolutely right.
Ferial, in the minute we've got left, can we expect more day zeros like we saw in Cape Town a few years back? Have we got horror stories coming in the future? Anybody able to predict that?
Tom, we already have horror stories. It's just that it's not Cape Town and it's not as developed as Cape Town, but we have, cities and little towns across the Eastern Cape who are experiencing day zero every day, right now, as we speak. And so this is definitely becoming something that we need to be aware of, and we need to be very concerned about it. I mean, we saw that, we've come out of one of the worst droughts that we've had in a long time. And we had to have, organizations like Gift of the Givers go and drop boreholes in places so that people can get water. And that is not going to end in any time soon. And that is a combination of climate, and it's a combination of just mismanagement of funds and municipalities that are not functioning. So we need to make sure that they function. We need to push them. We need to make sure that they know they can't get away with it. And one way of doing that, and we've been calling for the Department of Water and Sanitation to make an example of a municipal manager, charge them criminally, let them go to jail, and then that nonsense will stop.
Which goes back to the question that Clive Beckett poses to us every week, is when are we going to see people in orange overalls? Back to that word accountability. Hey, we don't have all the answers to the problems on this show, but we will discuss them and find solutions together. And we can, as South Africans, if we have honest conversations. I just want to leave with this comment from Tannen Slayer, who says, we need to know and understand that our efforts as citizens will actually be followed through right to the end, and we can actually see the expected results. How? Asks Tannen Slayer, and the response from Outer was join CAN, and let's start there. So I'll echo that response. Join CAN. Tim, thank you for your time tonight. We've got a few seconds left before load shedding cuts off Ferial, Adam, and perhaps me. So thank you, Tim, and a good night to you, and all our good wishes and prayers to you and everyone else in KZN.
Thank you very much, Tom. Be well.
You too. Stay strong. Ferial, thank you to you, and I know you're about to get cut in about 30 seconds from now, so thanks, Ferial.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
That's Dr. Ferial Adam. And then Julius Kleinhans in his car down the road because the load shedding has affected his connectivity. Thank you, Julius.
Thanks. Really is really special to be part of this. And just Mornay, we've got choices, but I think we owe it to our children and their children, that we get organized now and make sure as civil society that we are so organized that whoever's elected in the future doesn't have a choice but to listen to what we're saying.
And let us help you do that.
Amen to that. All right. Well, thank you, Ferial, Tim, and Julius, and you on the other side of the camera tonight for your participation, for your concerns, for Wednesday, and thank goodness for UPS systems. We're back online now. We'll be back next Wednesday to keep pushing, to keep chipping away, to keep putting these initiatives together, to echo the call that Julius and others have made tonight to join CAN, can.org.za, and let's start becoming more active. I think, I'd like to see the day where 10,000 of us rock up at the Department of Water and Sanitation and say enough is enough. Perhaps that's what we need. Anyway, good night to you. I wish you, if you're in KZN, please stay safe. My sympathies and my empathy, my heart lies with KZN tonight. My body is in Gauteng, but my heart lies in KZN. All the best to you, and hope that by the time we chat next week, we will have some positive news. Wherever you find yourself over the next 7 days, please stay safe and take care of one another. And return to us next Wednesday, 7 p.m. for another Outer Hour. I'm Tom London. And I mean this when I say it, because it's 7 days till we see each other again. I miss you already.
Our fight to eradicate corruption, maladministration, unethical leaders, and the abuse of taxpayers' money by those in power continues. It's fresh, it's fearless, and focused. The Outer Hour, where your voice matters.